All right, welcome to this episode, Industry45 Podcast Show. I'm your host, Shane Christopher Neal, live in studio, gianttv.ca, giantfm.com, country89.com, and now available at musiclifemagazine.net. Thanks to my good buddy, Mr. Joel Knappen. So today, speak to Mr. Ron Keel from the Ron Keel Band. Has a brand new album out, South by South Dakota. He's known as the Metal Cowboy. Yeah, the Metal Cowboy, and he's going to tell you why he's the Metal Cowboy. Gene Simmons produced the first two Ron Keel albums. He's played, are you ready for this? He's played in Black Sabbath. Yeah, you heard me right, Black Sabbath. He's got a ton of energy, ton of great stories. As mentioned, a brand new album out. And great guy to chat with. Mr. Ron Keel coming up right now. Industry 45 Podcast Show.
This is the Industry 45 Podcast Show with your host, Shane Christopher Neal. Podcast available at Giant TV Niagara on YouTube.
All right, Industry 45 Podcast Show. Thank you so much for always tuning in, chiming in, and paying attention to everything we do here at Giant TV, giantfm.com. Shane Christopher Neal here, and a really cool guest on the phone, because not only did I see he called me, I think, from Las Vegas, Nevada, the best place on earth, but when you listen to this guy sing and listen to his albums and his cover songs, he's a kick-ass singer. Mr. Ron Keel, welcome, my friend.
Fantastic to talk to you. Thank you. The Metal Cowboy reporting for duty.
So explain, see, I didn't get the Metal Cowboy at first because I didn't know a lot about you. And then I started to do some research, watch some videos. Now I kind of get it. When did you come up with that? Or who came up with that?
Well, you know, I have a heavy metal heart and a cowboy attitude and a nice long career in hard rock and metal with my success in the 80s with Keel and Steeler and brief stint with Black Sabbath, and now, you know, the Saber Tiger, and onto the current Emerald Sabbath project that I'm involved in. But I also love country music and had a nice run as a country artist as well. And, you know, when you mix those two together, it starts to sound like Southern rock, which is what we've done on the new South by South Dakota record. And the actual nickname of the Metal Cowboy was suggested to me by Keel guitarist Brian J. We were on tour in Europe in 2011, and he said, Ron, you should just be the Metal Cowboy. It's who you are. A little light bulb went off over my head. I got tattoos on my arms. One says metal, one says cowboy.
Yeah,
and here we are with some cowboy metal rock and roll, man. And I'm right at home in that no man's land in between metal and country music.
That's not a bad place
where I can call home. And I'm very comfortable here.
That's not a bad place to be, though, metal and country. Let me tell you, I like both of them myself. But I want to ask you, what was your first passion? What was it, like heavy metal? Was it Southern rock, or what was it?
Oh, there was no style. There was no prejudice, no division between musical styles. When I was growing up and falling in love with music for the first time, when I was just a child, saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, and then ended up playing in the school orchestra, in the school jazz band, and we were playing classical compositions from, 500 years ago, the classics, Mozart, Beethoven, and then we do the jazz band. We play Miles Davis, and then we do some horn music like Chicago or Stevie Wonder. I grew up at a time when you could hear Motown and metal and the Eagles and all this cool stuff on the same radio station. We only had a couple of choices back then for radio. And for me to listen to a song like Take It Easy by the Eagles, and then to hear Smoke on the Water or My Woman from Tokyo by Deep Purple, I loved it all. And I didn't realize, and I still don't realize or acknowledge the barriers between those styles. It's like telling an artist they can only paint with 3 or 4 colors. I want every color of the rainbow and every color of the palette available at my disposal when I create music and express myself.
Now, was would you say your first big break in your music career? I mean, you have these Keel albums. Gene Simmons produced, 2 of them, the first 2 or the first one? Is that at a point where you thought that you kind of made it to a pretty good place in the music business when you got a guy like Gene Simmons working with you? Or when was that moment?
Oh, that's a huge break. Obviously, Gene Simmons produced the first 2 major label albums The Right to Rock in 1985 and The Final Frontier in 1986. And for me, yes, it was a huge break just to get a major label record deal. And then for the label to give me input on who I wanted to work with as a producer, which is very unusual. Usually they don't ask you. They just put you with somebody who they choose. And the president of the label, Danny Goldberg, presented me with a list of producers in 85 when we got signed. And it was literally the who's who of all those 80s A-list heavyweights like Michael Wagner, Max Norman, and so forth. But one name on that list really stood out to me, and it was Gene Simmons. And only because I'm a huge Kiss fan, and the fact that Gene was also, he was a performer, a songwriter, an entertainer, a singer, a musician, and I thought maybe we could relate on some level because obviously I was certainly a huge Kiss fan. So we hooked up that meeting. Gene Simmons and I hit it off and ended up working together for that 2-year period, which was a huge break, like you mentioned, and changed my life and my musical career, both in the business and in the studio for the rest of my life. And those lessons Gene taught us back then are still very prevalent in every recording session, every rehearsal, every song. And I can't thank him enough for the support and his involvement in my career. Now, little did I realize when I picked his name off that piece of paper that it was a brilliant business move. I can't take credit for that. It wasn't about business. For me, it was about music. But the Kiss Army embraced Keel the week the album came out, and we sold a ton of albums, I think 90,000 albums that first week. And I credit that a lot to the Kiss fans who embraced Keel because Gene produced it. Of course, the song, The Right to Rock, was a big part of that. The album cover art, which is spectacular, and the fact that MTV was playing the video in heavy rotation, those all factored into it. But Gene was a huge, huge part of that early success, and I'll always be grateful.
It's interesting, though, because when I think of Gene Simmons, obviously I don't think of a producer, right? And same with Paul Stanley. I think of performers, songwriters, entertainers, businessmen, exactly what you said. So what did Gene then, you said he's taught you a lot of things. Give me an idea. Was it about the actual, like the way you're singing? Was it the way that you're producing? Was it the way that your bass player was playing? Like, give me an idea of kind of some of the things that maybe he's helped you out with, that's helped you over the years.
Great question. And the fact is, a lot of people don't know that side of Gene that I became friends with over the course of that relationship. The fact that he loves music, he loves rock and roll history. A quick example, how the bass guitar and the kick drum work together. I never realized that. A lot of people don't talk about it, but for us, it's always been super important. And Gene taught me this, that kick drum's doing a certain kick pattern, boom, 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 whatever that pattern is. The bass guitar has to marry that kick pattern and complement it in every way. And still to this day, we will go through just the bass drum and bass guitar patterns on every song we write and make sure they're tight, make sure they're locked in, make sure they complement the riff that's going on top of them. And just little things like that. And I could go on and on about those brilliant songwriting and studio production lessons that Gene passed on to me.
I want to ask you too, like, you know, you've been around for a long time, and this is kind of a music industry show. So I'd like to touch on things of like what things were like in the mid 80s compared to today. And they're a lot different, obviously, the way they look. So you were signed to a record label back then, right? So what was life like? Give me a snapshot compared to kind of where you're going today and what you're doing today. And in saying that, I'm going to talk about Patreon because I think it's great what you're doing. And it really is a new way of doing business. But I'll let you speak about kind of what it was like when you got started too.
Well, there are a lot of things that are the same. I like to focus on the things that have been consistent in my life, in my music, in the business in general. You've got to have a great product. You've got to work your ass off. These are basic lessons that everybody has to adhere to if you're going to be successful in life, business, music, or whatever. But the industry and the style, both, have always been evolving and changing, and you have to roll with the changes in technology. The internet just turned everything upside down. And we have to roll and we have to adapt to those changes. The bottom line is you still got to write songs and sing and play great. You got to work really hard. The internet has opened up so many opportunities for many of us, but it's also destroyed the revenue streams that we all grew up expecting or trying to make a living in this business. What I've done with Patreon, and I appreciate you mentioning that, genesis of my online platform, setting up with Patreon and building that page, came a few years back when my wife was diagnosed with cancer. And we were just like today, just like we are in 2020. All of a sudden, life changes, everything changes. You are focused on survival, on your health, on your wife's health, trying to keep the doorknobs clean and the light switches clean so she doesn't get infection. Obviously, a cancer patient is subject to infection, and the immune system takes a big hit during that process. During chemotherapy, during radiation, during 9 surgeries, I couldn't tour. We did a few shows close to home to keep the wheels turning, but basically I was committed to staying home with my wife, Renee, as she went through that battle with cancer. And I figured out I've got to find a way that I can entertain people from home. I need to work from home. Novel concept, right, in this day and age, but this is a few years back. And I thought, well, man, I'll build a stage in the house. And I built a performance area in the basement. I call it the fan cave. And it's decorated with gifts from fans from throughout the years with lights and PA and the whole deal. And I'll do online house concerts from home. Started the interaction with the fans, live online video chats, personal messages and interaction, uploading and sharing exclusive content like concert videos from the last 30 years. Music videos, unreleased audio tracks, demos, live recordings, special performances, everything that I can do to give those people the best bang for their buck. And it's 23 cents a day, $6.99 a month for all access. But it has become, especially in times like we're enduring right now, a huge opportunity for me to connect with my fans worldwide, work from home, continue to do what I love best, which is entertain people.
You know, it's such a smart thing, and that's very creative. Maybe Gene taught you that too, right? To be creative, to make money in this business, and things do change. Look at the situation right now, and we're gonna go back to your Patreon page and plug that again. But I want to ask you now, where we're taking down this road of, you doing some videos at home and having people buy into, your Patreon page. What about the music business moving forward after COVID-19? How do you see this happening? Like I personally, Ron, I don't see a lot of bands excited to play to half a theater or a stadium or to cars that are in a parking lot. I know we're going to have to adjust somehow. None of us really know, but how do you see the future of live music? Or is it exactly what you're doing? Maybe it's in your basement with a Patreon page and having subscribers.
Well, for me, it's easy. I'm going to do whatever I possibly can, whatever works, whatever makes me happy and entertains the fans. Now, the music business, that's a big spectrum there. You're going from the Foo Fighters on down to the cat in the subway station in New York who's got a bucket in front of him for tips or an open guitar case with a few dollar bills in it. And this guy's brilliant, man. I'm not speaking of any one artist in particular, but you see them all the time on your YouTube feed. These people are sitting there. They're absolutely killer. They're great singers, great players. They're playing for tips. They've got, at the end of the day, they might have $50, $100, and they've got 2 million YouTube views. That to me is the inequity of the situation. But it's always been that way. The really good artists aren't the ones who end up in the Hall of Fame or make the most impact on our lives or on music. Some of the biggest, especially in hard rock and metal, some of the biggest and best artists we have are not the best singers or players, but usually it's the guy who wants it the most. Guys like me. I'm one of those guys, man. I'm not the best singer on the planet. I do want it as bad now as I ever wanted it. And you work as hard as you possibly can. And the future of live entertainment, now that is an evolving situation that changes daily. And I know because I'm in the promo mode now, doing interviews every day to promote the new album, South by South Dakota, and talking to you and people like you with on radio and podcasts and media and television and magazines. And it's different today than it was yesterday when I was on the air with the Armed Forces Network, because it is evolving and changing. As just today, we've seen some concerts announced, and then the huge backlash of all the people you can't do that. That's not safe. So what the future holds, if you ask 100 people in the business, and I do. I talk to people in the business every day, managers, promoters, venues, agents, talent buyers, the media, people like yourself, the fans. I try and communicate with all of them. And if you ask 100 people, you're going to get 100 different answers. My nature is to stay positive and say, yeah, we're going to be okay. We're going to find a way around this. We're going to find a way to adapt and overcome. However, it's going to be a tough, long, hard road ahead. And the big arena acts, I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know how you're going to put 3,000 people in a 10,000-seat arena and still afford to put on that big show like Kiss or
Right.
Foo Fighters. So how that is going to unfold is going to be interesting and a little bit scary. The smaller venues, the mid-sized venues, might I add, the 300 to 500 seaters where bands like us can play. We can go to any given city in the United States or overseas and perform in front of 300 to 500 people at a club date. Those are going to be really tough because the promoters and the buyers are not going to be able to guarantee you the money necessary for you to make the road trip.
Sure.
Plus, all these dates are contingent upon each other. If you have a tour that's booked, a perfect example is that Rat, Tom Kiefer, Slaughter
Yes. Yeah.
tour that was booked this summer. If half of the dates get canceled, the other half of the dates are going to get canceled. You can't go out there and play one day, have 3 days off, then drive 1,500 miles to the next show. It just logistically doesn't make sense. You've got to route these things to where each day you've got a 200-300 mile drive, and the cities are in close proximity with the
Right. And you're making money.
regulations changing state to state. If, you don't know. You might be able to play Missouri, but you can't play the state next to it.
Hi, this is David Ellefson from Megadeth, and you're listening to the Industry45 Show.
Do you not think, though, to me, Ron, the when you talk about stadiums or arenas, you're talking about Kiss, the Foo Fighters, major, the Rolling Stones, but you're talking about people that, in essence, I don't want to say don't need the money, but it's not nearly as important as someone like you that's relying in the middle of the road, like you said, slugging it out. Not that you're not going to have those challenges you just mentioned, but I often think that these big stadiums for a while, I mean, we might not see that for a year. I think it's absolutely ridiculous, by the way, that Motley Crue has not announced that this fucking tour is canceled, because I don't know who's playing anywhere, but that's a whole other story.
Shane, when is it going to be okay? Because we've been waiting for, 30 years for an AIDS vaccine? It's not going to happen, man.
I know.
There's no vaccine that's going to cure any of these viruses. If you're waiting for a vaccine, you could, good luck, but it's not going to happen. The way to, and I don't want to get political, and I don't want to get medical. I'm certainly not a doctor or a scientist, and I don't want to play one on the podcast. But I think the way to build up your immunity is to expose yourself to germs, bacteria, and that's why I feel like I'm the healthiest I've ever been at this age and at this time. I'm not scared to get back out there and high five the people in the front row. I'm anxious to do that. Will I get that opportunity? I don't know.
Right.
Because even if you announce a concert and 90% of the people are willing to go, and they say on Facebook, yeah, I'll be there, I'll go, and everybody's a fearless superhero on Facebook. Let's see them actually get in line, buy a ticket, and fight their way to the front row and rub elbows with people they don't know and swap sweat and all that. Let's see if that really does happen. I hope it does, man, because it should. It should, in my opinion. And I don't even want to get into the science of it, the numbers and the misleading facts that we've all been fed that some people are buying into. Man, if I tell you, if you're standing 4 feet away from me and you're wearing jeans and you're wearing underwear and you fart, I'm going to smell it. Now, what good's a mask going to do, really? I mean,
there's a lot of challenges, right? Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from, and I agree with you, and I'm like you. I take safety precautions, but at the end of the day, I'm still out. I still go to work. I still do my thing. And I'm just a little more careful about certain things, obviously. But we got to get back at some point to live music and restaurants and bars and life. And I want to ask you. We're going to talk about the album, but I want to ask you about Vegas a bit. Do you live right in Vegas, or I'm not sure where you live? I just see it came up Nevada, but like that is a whole other challenge in my mind, because that is obviously one of the high entertainment meccas of the world, just like Los Angeles, right? Like there's theaters, there's live music. I was just in Vegas. I saw Aerosmith. I saw Foreigner. That's why people go there. I can't imagine what's going to happen there in the coming, months. And I try to keep my eye on it because I go there a few times a year. So what is it like out in that neck of the woods? I mean, obviously nothing's really open yet, I don't think.
Vegas is the entertainment capital of the world, or it was. Now, I live in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and half of the last 5 years prior to this.
Oh, okay. Here I'm going about Las Vegas because that's what I thought I saw come up. So
that's okay. No, I kept the phone number because at this stage of the game, the area code is irrelevant. So I just kept the same number rather than changing my phone number when I moved, because the world is my workplace. I mean, Vegas was a wonderful place. I produced and started my own casino show there for 10 years, and a fantastic run, got a lot of great friends out there. But in 2014, the last year that I lived in Las Vegas, I did 70,000 miles of traveling to shows that year and played in Vegas once. So all of my work was just like it is now. I mean, I'll play in Sioux Falls 2 or 3 times a year max. And then I just got back from Australia. And we did the Monsters of Rock cruise in Belize and Cozumel, and did the cruise in February. Then I did the Australian tour in March, and barely made it home in time before the travel ban or lockdown commenced. So I was really happy to get those overseas dates under my belt before the pandemic struck full force. But Vegas is, I'm hoping for the best for all my friends out there that try and make a living as entertainers. It's not easy, and it hasn't been easy since the economic crash of 2008, because that literally crippled Vegas, and the town never recovered from that. The fact that the town is built upon entertainment and gambling, there's a casino everywhere now. You can go to casinos all over the place. It's not.
Yeah, it's not just in Vegas anymore.
It used to be. Yeah, the residencies are cool. My residency this year is going to be at the Sturgis Bike Rally. We're going to be there for 6 nights, and people from all over the country, all over the world, come to Sturgis for the 80th anniversary of the Sturgis Bike Rally. And that's what I consider my residency, places where I can go like that and perform and entertain, where you're going to get that cross-section of society that comes from all over to congregate in that one place, kind of like the redneck biker Vegas, I guess. So you call that the Sturgis Rally. From all indications, the Sturgis Rally will proceed as planned. Now, the live entertainment agenda, that's a whole different animal to tackle. The rally will happen. The bikers will descend upon Sturgis in the millions, as they always do. And I hope that I'm right in the middle of it to share some good times and some rock and roll with those people. So we'll hope for the best in August, but I think we got to take it one day at a time.
I agree. And I apologize. I just thought you were I knew you were from the Dakotas there, but I just thought, you know what, maybe he's living in Vegas now, and that's why I was throwing that out there. So I apologize, but I appreciate the answer, though, because
it's all good,
it's
man.
Bang on.
It's all good.
So let's talk about South by South Dakota. So give me a little background on when that came into your mind to kind of do and how you rolled that out, because it's pretty cool.
Well, thank you. And for my entire career since 83, when I went into the studio to make the Steeler album, and every album I've created ever since, you go in the studio and you're on a mission. You've got a game plan. You've got a collection of songs that you've written or collected, and you're going into the studio, and you've done your rehearsals, and you're on you have a job to do and a mission to accomplish. With this album, it's absolutely the opposite, because we didn't even know we were recording. We were in the studio releasing or recording last year's like a band album. And we'd go in the morning and we'd warm up. And I think the first song we did was Flirtin with Disaster by Molly Hatchet, just to loosen up, warm up, so the engineer and producer can get tones and levels so we can get loose. And then at the end of the day, when we were done with our session, we'd have a couple of cocktails and we would play another, one of our favorite all-time classic cover songs. After a couple of days, I realized my producer, Mike Thresh, was recording everything. Of course he's recording everything. I should have known better. and I said, man, you recorded that? Really? Let's check it out. Let's listen back to it. And when I heard it, I realized immediately we had something very special here. We had guys that were in the studio just having a good time without any reservations, without any creative agenda. We're just playing music together, having fun. And that really is why we all started doing this in the first place when we were kids. To capture that on those first 5 or 6 tracks, immediately, as soon as I heard it, I realized, okay, this is the makings of an album. This is the foundation of an album project that could be really special. And we could do one song from each of our favorite legendary Southern rock heroes, like Molly Hatchet, Blackfoot, 38 Special, Marshall Tucker Band, Lynyrd Skynyrd, of course, the Allman Brothers. And we could create a tribute album to that style, that genre, that redneck rock and roll, that metal cowboy in all of us. And at that point, then we started to choose some additional songs. Well, we could have to have an Allman Brothers song, right? And we've got this Creedence medley we recorded live. We could throw that on there because that's really cool. The Creedence medley at the end, which is a live track recorded at our very first gig ever. So to have that memory captured and preserved and shared and released for our fans is a very, very special treat for me and the guys in the band. It's what we do live in the show. We will, like I said, when we play at a place like the Sturgis Rally or these big bike events or major fairs and festivals, a lot of those people, honestly, if you're playing for 20,000 people, a lot of them don't know who Ron Keel is. They don't know about my history with Gene Simmons or my success in the 80s or any of that. They're just there to be entertained. How do we give them what we do in a context that keeps them engaged and entertained without being a cover band? Because I don't want to be a cover band. So what we did from the outset was we created these little medleys in the show where we've got a 12-minute Lynyrd Skynyrd medley that'll take you in and out of Sweet Home Alabama and Give Me 3 Steps and Call Me the Breeze or Free Bird. And you do a verse and a chorus of each one. You kind of mash it up into a Vegas showpiece. One of the things I learned and loved about Vegas. It's very much like a Vegas Southern rock show. And you'll do that 12-minute Marshall Tucker medley. And you'll do that 12-minute Skynyrd medley. And then you'll mix in some tunes like Flirtin with Disaster or Train from Blackfoot that we call our own. And then you mix in the Right to Rocks and Because the Night, Somebody's Waiting, and all the Keel classics from the 80s, and the original songs from last year's Fight Like a Band album. Then you got a great show. And you keep the people engaged. You take them on a ride. You take them on a journey. Give them an experience that they'll enjoy and remember.
Absolutely. It's all about the experiences, right? For anybody going to see a live show. But your show looks like a lot of fun. I mean, I went to YouTube to watch a lot of stuff, but definitely something. You come to Canada or not too often?
Man, I haven't been to Canada in 35 years. The Canadian tour, which was to take place in August, has been, I don't know, postponed, rescheduled.
It's been something.
I don't know what you call it, but yeah, we were on our way, man. We had the dates locked in, and the ticket sales were great. But apparently, there are no shows in that region until I don't know when now. September.
Nobody knows anything.
Those Canadian dates. I mean, that I don't know what the regulations or restrictions are right now, and they're all subject to change. Dude, I've got a gig less than a month away. My first show of the summer. It's an outdoor solo show. I asked the promoter yesterday if I could start promoting it. If I'm getting back out there, I want to talk about it. And, Spike the Football, I want to tell the people that we're going to have live music next month. And they said no. They don't want me self-promoting the gig, which is, it's part of the reason I do it, is so that I can tell people, hey, look what I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're not allowed to promote the shows that are contracted on the books. The show hasn't been canceled, postponed, or rescheduled, but nobody knows. Put the left foot in front of the right foot, and you don't know if you're going to fall through the ice or not, man. It's that hairy out there in the entertainment scene. We just don't know what's going to happen. And as bands start to break down the barricades, so to speak, and confirm gigs, what are the repercussions going to be? What's the backlash going to be from the people who, if you want to stay home, that's cool, stay home. But let us do what we do. We're not putting anybody in danger. I mean, you're in danger just being alive. And, I do understand that this virus is serious to a degree, but
we're gonna have to live life at some point.
You risk your life. I mean, I'm driving down the road, and I spend my life on the road, man. and got a truck and a motorhome, and we're cruising down the road, and there's some chick in the car next to us, putting on her lipstick, eating a hamburger, texting on her cell phone, yelling at the kids in the back. That's not safe either, dude.
No, you're right. Absolutely.
You know? That's not safe either, but you're allowed to do it.
Yeah. No.
Because you're free to. We trust each other to use common sense and mitigate the dangers. And that chick in the car next to us is not mitigating the danger. She's being an idiot.
Absolutely.
Don't be an idiot. We can live. We just, you got to be smart and you got to use common sense. And it's a very dangerous world out there. Just a couple of months ago, we were shaking hands with everybody. You didn't know if that guy washed his hands or wiped his butt or picked his nose or what. You didn't know. You just shook hands. And I'm not, I don't want to be say and do the wrong thing. I'm just trying to express myself and tell you and your listeners and our fans how I really feel.
No, and I totally agree with you. Trust me. I want to ask you about David Ellefson. I did an interview with him last week from Megadeth. Now, are you working with his label still or no? Or you were on his label? Give me a bit of that relationship.
Oh, David's a great guy, man. And last year's Fight Like a Band album was released on his label, EMP. We go back a long ways. And back to the old Hollywood days of Steeler and Megadeth, and then also a lot of common ground in Phoenix, where I grew up and where David lives now. Great guy. I think the world of him. And it was just time for us to move on to a new label, High Vol Music, which is the record company that's now behind the band and pushing the new South by South Dakota record and doing a great job with that. Bill Chavis, the head of the label, has been a good friend of mine for 20 years now. We've watched each other grow and evolve and become really, really good friends through the years. And it was time for us to work together. I can't thank them enough for all the hard work. And this whole experience has been fantastic. Now that the record's out and we've got the digital launch and the world premiere of the Red, White, and Blue video, that's going to happen on May 28th at ultimateclassicrock.com, a huge media partner to share the world premiere of the new music video with our fans and everybody around the world who gets to see it with us for the first time. And the video for the song is a unique and amazing experience in itself, if I might tell you the story behind that, because, of course, you're releasing a new album. You got to pick a single. Red, White, and Blue is not only a classic rock anthem, it's a timeless and global statement about where we are now in our culture and society. And this is going to be the summer soundtrack for 2020. I think we'll always look back on this year and this pandemic and the music that we listened to and enjoyed to help us get through these tough times. And this is one of those songs. To film the video, we had to be isolated like everybody else is. I'm not getting the whole band and crew into a room and filming a video. We've got to keep our distance, so to speak, physical and musical distance. And I took each guy to a different iconic location here in South Dakota. Now, the lead singer, Ron Keel, he gets Mount Rushmore, of course. I chose which is obviously that's American. That's iconic. It's
very
South Dakota. So I filmed my footage at Mount Rushmore, Shane, and we went out there on the first beautiful spring day of 2020 in April on a Saturday afternoon, a time when the park would have been packed with families and tourists and visitors. And we went up to Mount Rushmore. Parking's free. The gift shop is closed. The tourist area, there's no staff. There's nobody there. There's no tourists. There's no families. There's nobody. And I was able to literally film my footage in front of the mountain in total isolation, just like the video. And it was a strange experience. And we went to Terrace Park here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where we live. It's a beautiful park, kind of like an outdoor amphitheater that's got these terraced levels where the families will sit and watch the bands on the stage. And it's a great gathering spot for our community here in Sioux Falls. We do a charity benefit show there every summer. And I went there on a Saturday afternoon to film the keyboard player. We set his piano and his rig up on the stage, so he's isolated. It's just him. No band, no audience. And it's a Saturday afternoon. You get the camera rolling behind the keyboard player. So you can see his hands in the back of his head. You look out at this beautiful terraced park, and there's nobody there. No families having a picnic, no kids on the playground, no nothing. So it really captures that isolation in a very real and tangible way. And I'm not a fan of the lockdown, as you probably already can tell, but without it, we would have never gotten this epic music video and the footage that we were able to capture in all these locations. But there's just nobody out. It's like,
Right.
It was, so I'm really proud of that fact that we were able to pull that off with a 6-piece band, and each guy had his own different location, put it all together to where you can tell we are isolated, but we stand united. That's the new video from Ron Keel Band, Red, White, and Blue, premiering May 28th at ultimateclassicrock.com.
Perfect. And what I'll do is once that comes out, I'll share it to our page as well for Giant FM, Giant TV.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
So patreon.com, is it / I got to get my slashes right. I think it's / Ron Keel. You can check that out as well. One other question for you. What was your, I guess, part in Black Sabbath? You help me with that. You didn't record with Black Sabbath, but you played with them, or give me just a real briefing on those days and what happened.
Well, the real big news about that whole experience, which started in '84 and still continues as people continue to ask questions about it.
Like me.
I'm very proud of that. Very proud of that fact, but it's really come full circle now with this project called Emerald Sabbath, which is, I think, 10 or 12 alumni, former members of Black Sabbath like myself, and former members of Ozzy's band as well, like Rudy Sarzo on bass. We've all come together to record this tribute to Black Sabbath called Emerald Sabbath. The website is emeraldsabbath.com. And so I was able to go in the studio with some of my friends and heroes from Black Sabbath. I mean, Vinny Appice on drums, D.C. Cawthon from the Ron Keel Band on lead guitar, an all-star cast, really. Dave Walker contributed some great vocals. He's former Black Sabbath vocalist who replaced Ozzy after Technical Ecstasy. So you've got some alumni. Bevan from Black Sabbath, who played drums in ELO and also on the Born Again album in '84 when I had my run-in with Tony and Geezer and Bev in the Black Sabbath camp. So we've released and recorded Emerald Sabbath. I got to do 3 tracks on the record, an Ian Gillan song, Trashed, from the Born Again album, which is a screamer and just a super high-energy song. I got to cover Ozzy on Hole in the Sky, which is an iconic Ozzy classic from Sabotage. And I got to sing Ronnie James Dio's Die Young from the Heaven and Hell album. I'm going to get the cat out of the bag because I am singing Heaven and Hell for Volume 2, but don't tell anybody. But yeah, Die Young. And the Ronnie James Dio classic from Heaven and Hell, and to put my voice on all 3 of those tracks and cover all 3 of those iconic Black Sabbath vocalists, a huge treat for me after all these years, after having to talk about it in so many interviews. Now I can proudly promote that new release. The results are incredible. I'd like to think, because Ronnie James Dio was a friend of mine, he took us on tour throughout Europe in '86. We were the opening act on the Sacred Heart tour in 14 countries across Europe. So Ronnie and I became really good friends and got very tight over the course of that tour. I'd like to think that wherever he is, heaven or hell, he's listening and approving of my version of his songs. I'm very proud of that. That was a tough chore, but I think the results are great. I'm really proud to be a part of it.
That's awesome. Are you still doing the Brooks and Dunn tribute or no?
No, I haven't done that in a long time.
Okay.
I think it was one of the best parts of my career. But I went to Vegas in 2006 with the intent of creating my own country tribute show. And my partner, Lynyrd and I were extremely successful at that. We had the longest running country music show in Vegas history. And I portrayed Ronnie Dunn in the show. Just an amazing experience in an entirely different industry. It's not like metal or country or rock, whatever. The tribute / impersonator industry is very, very difficult and a ton of fun, man. You're an actor playing a role. Basically, you get to step out of your boots and put somebody else's boots on and emulate them. And I love Ronnie Dunn's voice, his songs, everything about Brooks and Dunn and Ronnie Dunn. I mean, he's a huge favorite of mine. And the show was very successful. And I continued to explore my rock roots during that time as we progressed into the Keel reunion in 2009. Then I moved to Sioux Falls, South Dakota in 2000. 14, and the last Brooks and Dunn tribute gig I did was my last gig in Vegas. Just before, literally 3 weeks before I moved, we did one final farewell show. And God, I miss it. I miss all my friends in Vegas. I missed doing a big production show in the casinos every night. And I have very fond memories of that experience. I'm very proud of it because it's not easy to do. And especially it's not easy to do well. Like I told you earlier, I'm not the best singer in the world, and I never will be, but I guarantee you, dude, I am the best Ronnie Dunn impersonator on the planet. Or at least I was back then. I'm a little rusty now. It's been 5-6 years, but God, what a blast it was.
Yeah, I love Brooks and Dunn. Great songs, great singers, and just like classy guys and all around. So, I mean, you're all over the map, doing a great job. Congratulations on South by South Dakota, the album, and appreciate your time, Ron. Really do.
I appreciate your time and the opportunity to speak with you. Keep up the good work, and thanks again. Hope to talk to you again soon.
This is the Industry 45 Podcast Show with Shane Christopher Neal.